Hi, Rice here. As you can see on the screen, this is a map of all the blue streak data that was collected during the ride, and it is directly on top of the roller coaster taken from the maps. This is so cool. I'm going to make another screencast just so you can do this with your own data. So I'm going to walk you through how this is done, and it's basically just a chart in Excel that is plotted with an image background that's a screenshot taken from Google Earth. So here we go. We're going to do this. I'm going to go back to the data, to the modified data. I've got my raw NEMA sentences, but I don't want to play with that. I'm going to play with this. And I'm actually going to hide these two, which is something that I used to make mine. I'm just going to make a new one right inside of here. So what I've got right now is this set of data that has already been modified and prepared. And I'm going to make just a table over here in any two columns. I'm going to format it as a table like this, and say my table does not have headers, and just let it make a table. So there it did. I'm going to call this my longitude and this one my latitude because I want them to be in that order. So I'm going to say for my longitude I want that to equal this, and since it's a table it automatically fills it down for me, and for my latitude I'm going to do this, and it'll automatically fill that one down also. So now what I can do is I can take these two things and I'll just highlight the group of them that I care about. Boy, that went way lower. I could have set the bottom of the table. Probably would have been smart. Maybe that would have been a good move. But I can take this, come back up to the top and say insert a graph. And I want to insert one of these graphs, a scatter graph that's got a line. And so I'll do this. You can see that that's pretty close to the shape of my roller coaster. And if it isn't exactly the shape of your roller coaster, stare at it for a little while. Maybe it'll make sense. And it could be that part of it is off. The blue streak is the one I'm doing because it seems like it might be the most accurate data. It was a wooden roller coaster. There was no metal to interfere. There's lots of reasons why this might have gone better than others. And just to be clear, probably reasons that weren't your fault. But in any case, we're going to take a look at this one. So this is like the path of the blue streak. We can have this here and sort of see it over there, and then pull up over on this side. This is Google Maps for Cedar Point, and if we go to Earth View, we'll see what it looks like. And it's loading. If we come over here, we can zoom into where the ride is, which is down over here. So there's the blue streak popping up. It's coming into focus now, and you'll see that it's got pretty much the same path, but it's sort of inverted. So there's a few things that we're going to have to do to try and get this to match and have it be pointed in the same direction. The real trick is that I'm going to take my data over here in these tables, and I'm going to try and just invert it. So I'll do like 100 minus that, and we'll see how it changes my graph. You notice it redrew the graph, and it flipped it around to be just the right way. I did 100 minus just so it was a number bigger than any of the GPS coordinates, and it would invert the numbers. It's sort of change them to be the opposite way. I could have also done negatives, but I kind of wanted numbers along there. Maybe I could get rid of that 100 and just put in negative I2, and you'll see it does the same thing, but it does this weird stuff to axes that I really don't want to play with. And it's got negatives across here. That seems weird. I'm going to Control Z and go back to my 100 minus. But really, you can make whatever choice you want. We're just trying to do a translation like you talk about in math class for graphing, where you're changing around your data set. And so, I'm going to do this hit Control Z again. But there you go. So this translation or flipping has happened that's like you do in math class. So we've got this graph flipped around so that it's the right way. But that's not the hard part. That is relatively easy. What we need to do now is get this image as the background to that graph. So let's make this full screen. You can choose graphs and make their background whatever you want. So I can format my plot area, and there's a bunch of options for how I can do the border, or I can do a fill. Let's go back to no line or automatic line for the border. For the fill, I can do a solid fill, and you'll see it fills it in whatever color I feel like. I could fill it with the yellow. I could do a gradient fill. But picture or texture fill is what I want to have. And you can see it automatically dropped in the last picture I used, which was the blue streak. But I can choose it from a picture online, or I can choose it from a file. And so I'm going to choose it from a file. There's a lot of different things. There's also, they have clipboards. They have a few that are preloaded. You probably won't have your roller coaster preloaded, but let me show you how to get that. So all I did was I took the roller coaster and I put it nicely in the center of the screen. I want to make sure that it's nice and big. So zoom in a little bit. And then there's a print screen button on the keyboard. I'm going to hit that, and it just copies whatever's on my screen. And then I'm going to go to Paint. This is just regular old Paint, and I'm going to paste it in. So here I hit paste, and there it drops in. Now once you're in Paint, you'll notice that it takes up more than your area, which is okay. I zoomed out a little bit now. But then I'm going to select all of it. I can select all of this thing, and I'm going to move it so that I get rid of all the stuff that isn't the map part that I care about. So anything that isn't, showing me the ride, anything that looks like it's computer parts, I'm going to get rid of, and just do something like this. So now I can zoom back in a little bit more and see there's my ride. So this I'm going to take and save this as, we'll come up with a name as soon as it gives me the choice. But I'll name it as like Blue Streak 1 and just throw it on my desktop because it's not that big of a deal. Blue Streak 1. Sure, there it is. So now I've got this, and it's saved to my desktop, or it's saving to my desktop. It's running slow this morning. And we come back over here to Excel, and what I'll do is take this and insert a picture I can do from the clipboard, which would be from that copied thing. I could directly just paste that in. But then I'm going to have all those computer pieces around, like the start bar and the browser menu, and that seems gross. So instead, I'm going to go back to that file, the one that's on the desktop, and I called Blue Streak 1. So I'm going to find that. Here's Blue Streak 1, and I can insert this one so that it is exactly what I want it to be. And now let's zoom it out. And there's a few configurations that I can make to make this line up even more. You can see it's sort of floating here. For my line, I'm going to change it yellow. I'm also going to make it a little thicker, I think, just so that it looks nice. It gives me a little bit more wiggle room so you can see that it's over top. And I'm going to up my transparency, at least for now, so I can see through the line a little bit. So now what I have to do is change my graph so that everything fits. Like I'm going to take this axis, and I need to move the whole thing down a little bit. So what I'm going to do is click on my axis options, and I want to think about my axes, and I want to look at their alignment, or actually my axis options like this. So here's my axis, and I want to make my maximum a little bit higher to bump it down. So I'm going to make this 0.5. Whoops, and you see that was way too much. It bumped the top way down to there. So I'm going to go back to 4.8. And maybe make it instead 4.9 and see what adjustment that does. That's still too much. I could go back and say 4.85, which is half as much. Maybe I need to do 4.82. But I'm just sort of playing around. 4.805, maybe make it smaller. That's a little closer. 4.844. 4.84. We're just sort of playing around until we get something that works. A little bit less, maybe if I go to 2 there. But there you go. My top seems to be lined up. The bottom's pretty close. I could set my minimum slightly lower. Like that. Nope, I want to go the other way, it looks like. 3. Yeah, so there my bottom is pretty close. And then the other thing that I want to adjust is where my horizontal axis is located. So that is going to be the same game. I need to think about how to adjust these numbers to try and squish my graph until it lines up over the roller coaster. I'm not changing the data. I'm just changing how it's graphed because my background is pretty well fixed. So we play around with I'm going to need to play with the maximum, sort of bring it in a little bit. And so my maximum will need to get larger. So let's do 0.321 and see what that does. Oh, that got pretty close. 311. We're there. You notice it affects everything, so I'm going to have to keep tweaking it until it lines up just right. But it will work out, and you can get your graph to be pretty close to the ride. And the really impressive thing is to have it lay right over top. And if you do it just right, you can see what parts of the ride are matched and what parts aren't matched, so that if someone's processing the data, they can see, oh, it worked for these sections, but then it sort of lost it in this part, and then it regained it again. And I've looked at maybe the Iron Dragon and Gemini data, and it looks like those have a few sections where it did get off a little bit. But those are roller coasters with large metal housings that are on the that are in the train or in the track, and so those may have deflected your GPS data a little bit. Anyway, this is a neat way to see your data visualized, and you can see that the X and the Y, the latitude and the longitude parts, they really, really worked shockingly well. So have fun graphing this, and I hope that your graphs all turn out great. Thanks.